What is up, Internet Basketball Junkies? Coach Hack here with Coach Pat Casey. What does modern basketball actually look like when all the pieces are connected? Coach Pat Casey has joined me as we use Brad and Tyler Underwood's Illinois system as our lens for 7 concepts that are shaping the modern game. From positionless basketball and advantage creation to screen deception, shot selection, attacking switches, and continuous offense, as well as tag up. Pat and I will alternate presenting film and concepts while breaking down not just what Illinois does, but why these ideas work together. This is our modern basketball blueprint, the Illinois Underwood system. Coach Casey, welcome back. I've been seeing a lot of you lately, and I just can't get enough. I feel like these sessions we've been doing together just keep getting better and better.
Yeah, it's been fun. And again, I appreciate you having me on. Gets my mind turning, get the gears turning. But I also, I think I saw a tweet recently that said the most dangerous thing is a coach coming right off a clinic, and so I just got to be careful that I don't do too much because I'm getting a bunch of ideas from all this.
Well, I might be the worst contributor to that in the world, as much content as I'm putting out and things that I'm trying to do. But to me, it's up to the coach. They've got to have the discipline to learn what to explore. Yeah. And I think that you want to take in a lot of ideas. I don't know that you need to implement. If you implemented everything that I did a stream on, it would be a big, big problem. But I don't think you implement all the stuff. I think you take in a lot of ideas and you only take the best winners. Coach, we're here, not to say that these 7 elements we're going to talk about are what modern basketball is, but we took this Illinois system, we broke it down into 7 components that I think would make up, technically modern basketball, and we're going to present these different topics to the world here today. So I'm excited to do that with you. Credit to, Brad and Tyler Underwood for, developing this system that's been so fascinating to study. I know that we've talked about this in some of the previous streams, but, Brad Underwood is not a spring chicken here. And he's had a lot more rigid offensive systems in his coaching days. So to kind of turn a new leaf and to get into a lot of these modern tactics, I think he deserves a lot of credit, and I know that we've mentioned that before. There's some older school coaches out there that are still doing kind of the same thing, and, some of the coaches that are even a little bit older are starting to adapt, and Coach Underwood, I think with the help of his son, is definitely one of those coaches. So anybody out there watching, if you're not following Coach Pat Casey, make sure that you do that. X is probably that home platform for him, but he's also on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube. If you're not doing that, stop what you're doing, switch your browser, make that follow, and then jump back into the live stream. But we've got these 7 different topics here that we're going to talk about. We're hoping to have maybe 12 to 15-minute segments on each of them here today. And any of the viewers out there that have questions about the things that we're talking about, or if you just want to say hi, make sure you drop that into the chat. So, Coach, we're going to lead this thing off with you. You're going to talk about positionless basketball to get us going. And, we're using Illinois because, you can see so many of these modern basketball ideas in one system. And, we're going to alternate presenting, but we're going to kick this thing off with a positionless basketball segment. Coach, so I'm going to flip it to you there.
All right. I'm excited to get into it. I know. So I think I shared some stuff with you to put up on the screen, but one of the things that I've been thinking about when we talk about modern basketball is what are the roots of modern basketball. And so I've done, I'm a history teacher. So as I look at basketball, I look at it through the lens of a history teacher too. And I like to find those through lines. It's certainly not comprehensive looking at a list like this, but I think you can see where each thing built on the next thing. You see it in music as well, like artists using samples from other artists, and it just continues to build and build and build and become what modern music is. I think you see the same thing in basketball. Like everything is stolen and it's all built and it's all derivative. It's one person taking another person's thing and turning it into a slightly different thing. And so the first thing I think about, because we returned to it so many times in our last stream, is talking about space and spacing on the court. And when I think about space, I think about Chuck Daly saying, offense is spacing and spacing is offense. Now the spacing for Chuck Daly was a little bit different than the spacing that we see from the Underwoods and Illinois. But that's where you're starting to see big men being willing to stretch it out and shoot it, like Bill Laimbeer and Rasheed Wallace in those bad boy Pistons teams. Don Nelson is like one of my favorite people to study, and, you know, rest in peace to him. He passed recently, but I think he's one of the most fascinating people in the world to study. He was kind of a controversial figure, didn't have like a crazy winning record, but he was around basketball his entire life. And when you look at the stretch of his career, like he takes over the Bucks post Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and turns them into this team that has basically no bigs. And they ran 3 shooting guards in the game at the same time in the middle of the 80s. And it started getting this term called Nelly ball, and where he's just spraying it around. And there were even examples of Don Nelson, like putting his 5-man at half court to pull shot blockers all the way away from the basket, so they could get to the basket a little bit easier. And this is before all the analytics around shots at the rim and open 3-point shots. And then, you know, he's running run TMC with the Warriors, with Tim Hardaway and Mitch Richmond and Chris Mullin, where they're rolling out a lineup where the tallest guy is 6'8". And, you know, again, this is like late 80s, early 90s. And then he takes over the Mavs, and he's got Nash and Dirk and Finley, and he's just innovated in so many different ways. And it leads me to the point that constraints lead to creativity, that when you're limited in some way, it leads to creativity, and then that creativity can become an advantage. And you see that with Don Nelson and a bunch of the different stops that he's been at. You know, he goes and takes over the We Believe Warriors, and then he's the one that drafted Steph. He's the one that drafted Luka to the Mavs, and he's the one that he calls Dirk Nowitzki his German son. And Dirk is like that quintessential example of a stretch 5 that kind of leads into this positionless thing that we're talking about, where bigs can shoot it. And then Gregg Popovich was on Don Nelson's staffs, and he started pilfering from the international game and pulling people like Boris Diaw to be initiators in his offense. So again, you're getting to this positionless offense, and then you get people like Paul Westhead, Mike D'Antoni, who are pushing pace. And so we get to this modern idea of pace and space. And you get people like Steve Kerr, who are pulling ideas from Gregg Popovich, with him playing for the Spurs, and then pulling from his experiences with the Bulls as well, with Phil Jackson. So he's like blending Popovich's international game with the triangle offense, and then also his influences from the soccer coach at Barcelona and the way they pass the ball and play through shapes. And so you see like innovation on top of innovation on top of innovation, and you can kind of see the through lines with the way these people are connected. And then you get things like Mazzulla ball, where it's like straight analytics, threes all the time, sitting guards in the dunker spot, which we're going to see out of Illinois. Like he's putting Derek White in the dunker spot. And then you get to people like Rick Carlisle as well, who he's part of those Mavs teams that Don Nelson was the GM for, with bigs that can really shoot it. But then he goes to the Pacers and totally changes his ideas and starts tagging up, pressing full court, and starting to shrink the transitions of the games, which is what we see out of the Underwoods in Illinois as well, where they decide we're going to tag up every possession and earn more and more possessions, because it's all like analytics driven, points per shot, points per chance driven. So like I kind of like seeing the way that it's built up to the point that it's at, where it's this hyper efficient offense, And then we get to see everything kind of get mashed together with Illinois being this positionless and analytics driven offense that's finding advantages all over the court and becomes one of the most efficient college basketball teams that we've ever seen.
Yeah, Coach, if you've got to throw that back up there, if you can, if you've got to, walk before you run, and we're running now, this list of coaches that we're looking at is, they laid the foundation. They did the walking so that we can run now with these concepts in basketball. And the interesting thing is it's fun looking at this list and just thinking about, I associate certain contributions to basketball with, each one of these people, whether it's the 0.5 decision making from those Spurs teams, whether it's the 7 seconds or less D'Antoni teams. I look at Steve Kerr and I think about this post split action. In Mazzulla, you already mentioned that, where it's almost purely math in a sense. So great graphic, great kind of history breakdown. Sorry to disrupt your flow. I know you're trying to
No, it's great. It's great.
Get into the things that you want to present here.
Yeah, and it's certainly not comprehensive, but it makes me think of the Pete Carrill book as well, the smart take from the strong, and we see that out of every one of those coaches as well, is that they're grabbing ideas from all over the place. But then we mentioned the joking point about a coach coming off of a clinic, but they made it their identity. And that's what Illinois did a really good job of, is that they didn't just take a bunch of ideas and throw them out there on the court. They took a bunch of ideas and ingrained them into who they are as a team. And you can see it in the way that they play, that there's clarity in every decision that they make. And a lot of it opens up because of what we start with, which is the positionless stuff. And I can pull up that film to share with you.
Yep. So, Coach, Positionless is going to start us off. We're going to go into an advantage creation segment after that. We're going to do some shot selection as the third segment, then getting into how we deceive with our screens, talk about attacking the switch, and then finally close it out with how the offense stays continuous. It doesn't stop, and tagging up as our last segment. So, Coach, I believe that your film is all loaded in here. I'm going to add that to the stage and let you loose.
All right. We mentioned on the last one and this first clip, I think it's the perfect example of them playing positionless. You see their 5-man bringing the ball up the court, getting a switch onto a small guy. They're looking for their advantages. They don't find their advantages. They continue playing with the offense. And you're ultimately going to end a possession with the smallest guy on the court posted up and getting a shot out of the post. I think that speaks to the way that they're fluid with their positioning on the court. Last time we talked about the spacing that they're willing to get into, but it's not just the spacing templates that they have. It's that they're willing to put any of the 5 players on the court in those spacing templates. And so you see things like this with their guards setting screens for their bigs. They love using guards to set screens for their bigs. You'll see guard post-ups. You see bigs initiating possessions. And it speaks to what they value in recruiting as well, which is this idea that we want to recruit skilled guys. We want to put 5 guys out on the court that can dribble, pass, and shoot. We mentioned last time that Andrej Stojakovic, who goes into the post right there, he was probably their highest minutes and lowest percentage 3-point shooter, and he was one of their main guards. But they were also very willing to put him into post-up situations. You'll see when we get to the attack the switch segments, the way that they used him off the ball to attack switches as well, which I thought was really interesting as I was looking through the film. But again, they're just willing to put anybody in any position, and it creates serious problems for the defense where when you have a big initiating and you're able to get switches and create matchup advantages and put the wrong guy in help position and then do do what we had talked about before, which is hunt really bad defenders, where they call them attacking beards. It allows them to attack those really bad defenders and put them in tough positions. But they're comfortable putting all 5 guys in any position on the court at any time.
Yeah, I love seeing Boswell and Wagler both in the post and working that Barkley action. I think a lot of coaches, when they think of this positionless basketball, I think they think, a lot of it is just you're having big men that can shoot, pass, and dribble, and that makes your team kind of a positionless thing. And it's not necessarily that or all the players on the court having the same skill set. It's more about just kind of removing these limitations that like this rigid position system that we went by for so long, where you've got a point guard, a shooting guard, a small forward, a power forward, and a center, and each of them have kind of their own unique thing that you're looking for. That's kind of gone by the wayside, and now you're looking at players that are different sizes but all have the skills to do everything that you'd want to do on the basketball court. So coach, not to hijack your segment here, but how much of the shooting element, having 5 players on the court, because there's teams that are playing modern basketball that have 5 shooters on the court. We're looking at one of them right now, but there is still some teams that are playing relatively modern and they still use kind of a rim running center. So when you think about playing positionless, how much of that is really relies on having 5 shooters out on the court?
I think, and I think Ben McCollum spoke to this at one point, because what I love about him is like he'll have some guys that don't shoot it very well, but they really excel at the other things. And so I heard one coach describe it as like, what's your separator? Like as they're getting into recruiting, they want to recruit guys that are long, athletic, and can dribble, pass, and shoot. But their main thing is what's your separator? And for some guys, they might not be able to shoot it very well, but they can dribble it really well. They can pass it really well. And they can create advantages in other ways. And that's where I see Andrej Stojakovic as well, as like he is an unbelievable driver to the basket. Like that is his separator. And he gets to the free throw line a lot because of that as well. And when we start talking about like shot analytics, you get into the most efficient shots on the court, and it's advantage at the rim, it's open three, and it's free throws. And so if he's not able to consistently knock down threes, well, he's going to get to the line a lot. And because the other guys on the court can really shoot it, he's going to have space to attack gaps. And so you don't necessarily need, I don't think you necessarily need all 5 guys to be able to really shoot it. But you need to have a separator in some way. This is also like, this is my pitch for college coaches to start recruiting my 6'3" 5-man. Like just get smaller guys that can finish around the basket.
What's his coach?
Hey, he can finish around the basket at 6'3" against bigger guys. There it is. But no, I mean, you see it a lot at the D2 level, which I really appreciate, is like you get these tweeners positionally, but they're able to create advantages. And it's really just how the coach views it. It's like, do you view it as a disadvantage that you have a shorter big man? Or do you view it as an advantage where you're going to create mismatches because other teams might put smaller guys on him, or they might put bigger, slower guys on him where he can create an advantage that way. So it's really just about like identifying what strengths you have on the court and figuring out how can we leverage those strengths and how can we put the defense in the worst position possible.
Yeah, we watched this Illinois team, and we all know, Wagler, top 5 draft pick. He is, the head of the snake here. He's taking a lot of tough shots. He's handling the ball. He's making decisions off these ball screens. He's the key guy. But you've got this Mirkovic, who, watching this film, just the versatility is just unbelievable. This guy is a 6'10" power forward, and he's dribbling the ball up like a point guard. He's taking inverted pick and rolls that the guards are setting. he's not only handling inverted pick and rolls, but he's stepping into threes coming off of the inverted pick and rolls. And then, they're running all this action where they high ball screen at the top of the key. He's popping. They can pitch it to him and he can shoot that three. He's at 37.5%. But not just is he a pick and pop threat, but he is the connector from one spacing template to the next spacing template. So if a team is able to defend the ball screen without giving up an advantage, they throw it to the pop guy and Merkovich, and they manage to cover that well. All he is he's the connector. He's taking it to the next side, and they're right into their next action to create another advantage. So, we know Wagler deserves a lot of credit, but the Merkovich thing, and he's back to play for him again this year. It'll be interested to see if he carries even a bigger burden this year. But him as a connector and handling these inverted pick and rolls and be able to beat you from inside and outside and just really kill mismatches. I know a lot of high school coaches don't just have that guy walking around their hallway. But when we're talking about being positionless as a team, he's kind of the linchpin in making everything kind of fit together. So, Coach, where else do you want to take us in this positionless basketball discussion?
I mean, I think those are the biggest things is the ideas around the emphasis on skill. And, I actually saw a pretty recent interview with Mike D'Antoni that was talking about his the pace of his system and the way he would be willing to play smaller guys, putting PJ Tucker at the forward position. And he mentioned that small ball, like he was talking about small ball. He was like, small ball isn't really about size. It's about skill.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really about the height of the player. It's how much skill can you put on the court? Can you put 5 guys out there that are really skilled? And that's the same idea with that Warriors death lineup as well. Like, how much skill can you put out on the court? It's not necessarily about the height. It's about the skill. It's one of the reasons that, as a high school coach, like I'm not really that worried about playing more guards. I want as many skilled guys on the court as possible. Now you have to figure out the rebounding problem. You got to find solutions for your team. But I just want to put as much skill on the court because it's going to create way more space for every player when there's skill on the court. So I thought that was pretty interesting, the way he was mentioning that, it's not really about the size, it's about the skill. The thing about Illinois, though, is that they put that skill on the court and they're still one of the tallest teams in the country. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of the reasons they were a Final Four team. They were very impressive.
So, Coach, I'm going to load up the advantage creation stuff right here, and I'm going to leave you with this question to buy me some time while I do that, which is, this positionless basketball that we would all like to play if we could. How much of that is actually, developed in how you train your players? We're at the high school level. You kind of have what you have. Some schools, they have some advantages where they can have a little bit more. But at the high school level, most of what you're going to coach is the kids that are in your school system. How much of this can you do if you're not picking your players and you have to trying to develop your team into a positionless basketball system?
I think probably the most important thing for me as I'm thinking about skill development to try to get exactly what you're talking about is putting as much skill on the court as possible. Is you got to rep a lot of shooting and you got to rep a lot of ball handling. Like I think those two things are really important. Passing's a big part of it, but we incorporate passing into so many of the other things that we do. I think it's hard to have a skilled, confident team if they don't feel confident dribbling the ball and if they don't feel confident dribbling the ball against pressure. And it doesn't have to be like you have the ball on a string like Kyrie Irving every time. But you do have to find some way to develop confidence against pressure and feel like you don't have to be looking at the ground when you're supposed to be making decisions. So having enough confidence to work your eyes to see the whole floor and to see the spacing templates that we're talking about, see where the advantage is. I think you have to have confidence with the ball in your hand. And so that's what we end up spending a lot of time on in skill development. Is we spend a ton of time on handling the ball, and we spend a ton of time on shooting the ball off of catch and shoot. And you'll see when we get to the shot selection stuff for Illinois, like the catch and shoot shot is like over 50% of their shot attempts is like mostly kick out or off the dribble shots that are in advantageous situations. So and when we get to the shot selection, we'll talk about it as well as like starting with the end in mind. What kind of situations do you want your players to end up in, and try to gear your skill development towards those situations?
Yeah, Coach, you had mentioned it earlier, where the small ball thing is more about skill than it is about size. And kind of once you've removed the positional limitations or positional restrictions that we've had from thinking about basketball, having to have a point guard, a shooting guard, a small forward, power forward, center, the question becomes, what do you want to do with the amplified skill level that you're putting out on the court? And I think for Illinois, kind of the overriding answer to that is we want to create advantages. So if there's kind of one organizing principle underneath Illinois' offense, I think it's this advantage hunting that they're after. They've got empty, high, and spread ball screens. So we covered this in the last stream. We won't overdo it, but basically these are kind of the spacing templates that they use to set their ball screens, and the ball screens are really the mechanism for them to hunt advantages. And the reason that is the case is because the ball screen force the defense to make some kind of decision that Illinois can react to. So it's that decision forcing mechanism. They don't care if you're going to switch or drop cover or hedge the ball screen or blitz it or go under or whatever. They just want you to make a decision so that they can get into trying to work that in their benefit to create an advantage. So kind of the framework for this advantage creation segment that I wanted to go through is to kind of work through some possessions in a progressive order. And Coach, you just butt in wherever you have something to add, but I've got maybe 10 or 12 clips to go through, and I'm going to go through them on kind of a slow basis. But really what we're looking for here in talking about advantage creation is, if the defense gives us an advantage that we can cash in on right away, we're happy to do that. We want to do that. If it takes, transferring that advantage, maintaining, enlarging, and transferring an advantage, we're happy to do that too. And the kind of end result where you're seeing a lot of these passing sequences where they're moving the ball fast while the defense is scrambling, we're calling that blender ball. But that's not really the goal. The goal isn't necessarily blender ball. It's to cash in an advantage with a gold medal shot, probably as quickly as we can in a possession. We're not. This isn't a deliberate offense. We're not trying to really burn clock. We're trying to work the defense to get what we want out of a possession here. So those are the ball screen spacing templates. Now let's take a look at what these advantages look like. And first and foremost here, we talk about Illinois. They have a ball screen offense. Well, we don't need to run a ball screen offense if we have an advantage in transition. So the first thing we're trying to do, particularly when we acquire the ball off of a missed shot by our opponent or a turnover, is we're going to push the ball with pace, and we're going to look for an advantage in transition that we can cash in. And obviously, if it takes drawing a second defender and kicking the ball, we're willing to do that. But we're perfectly willing to score before we set up. But we've also got great ways to kind of decelerate into our ball screen templates if we don't have an advantage in transition. So the second phase of this, before we get into even looking at any plays, is the defense. If they're over helping, like we're looking at a defense right now that's loaded to the midline, and this might get you by in a a high school setting, Coach, you might be able to be running a midline help side. But at the Division I college level, you're kind of asking to get bombed on a skip pass here. So in advantage creation, like sometimes advantage doesn't have to be we're driving the ball downhill and a defender has to step and put his chest in front. Some of these advantages can just be the defense is overloaded to the ball. They're helping too much. They're out of position. And we don't need to go in and engage the defense to make them put two on the ball to make this pass. We can just recognize it and kind of fire away there.
Yeah, I
So
think
kind of
one of the
moving on. Go ahead, coach.
just one of the other things I was thinking about as we were looking at that clip is something that we talk about with our guys when we get into empties in our 5-out ball screen stuff is the idea of working the window. And you see Jake Davis do it here is, again, you're talking about advantage creation, and you'll see it when we look at some of the attack the switch clips that I have as well, is that they're really good at hunting advantages off the ball too. And so seeing what the help is doing, sneaking into the dunker spot on the weak side, and then as that help really starts to shift over, like the off ball guys, he's not just sitting in the corner where the spacing template might tell him to sit. He's working the window. He's opening up a passing lane for the ball, like giving the ball a clear line to get to him where he can catch it in rhythm and get a great shot.
Yeah, good stuff, Coach. Kind of moving on in this sequence here is, we've just talked about some naturally occurring advantages based on pushing the pace and recognizing positions of the defense. Now we're kind of looking at manufacturing our own advantages. So a situation like this, we've got the high ball screen. We're got a soft show here. Doesn't create an edge quite enough, but we've got an advantage here. Keaton Wagler's got a defender on his hip, and we've got no help here at the rim. So we have our advantage, and what do we do with it? If there's no help, we're going to try to cash that in. We're going to score it and draw the foul. So, moving on, now we start to see more of these kind of direct advantages. We use the ball screen. Actually, we reject the ball screen after we flip it here. We attack downhill. We've got a defender stepped up that takes away a shot here. We don't, Wagler doesn't necessarily want to be shooting over two people, although he does that pretty well. But when the help steps up, we can make a direct pass to capitalize on that advantage. So we're transferring that advantage to the next player for them to take a gold medal shot. So again, pick and pop, and this is looks like either a trap or a hard hedge type of situation, a hedging situation. We have an advantage. All right, him catching this pass with this amount of space and this closeout right here, that's an advantage. So the question becomes, are we going to cash this one in right now, or are we going to use this space to try to drive the ball and create a bigger advantage? So we're getting into, we're creating an advantage. We can score right from it, or we can look to engage a second defender. Again, we've got this help the helper situation where we come off the ball screen. We've got our advantage. He could probably score that, but we've got help that rotates over. We've got this help that's dropping down. So Wagler is reading that, and he's going to make, pretty high level pass here to the weak side. But we're transferring the advantage that we've created, trying to pass up, maybe a silver medal shot for a gold medal shot. But again, just kind of moving forward, we can get advantages in different ways. They're identifying this as an advantage, this size matchup here, where he's just going to take this Barkley and say, I don't need head and shoulders going to the rim to be my advantage. My advantage is that I'm 4 inches bigger than you and 40 pounds heavier than you, and I'm just going to go right to the basket and score it. So using a move like a Barkley just to capitalize on a size mismatch, that's an advantage too. And here they're doing kind of the same thing here, where out of their ball screen offense, we've got this empty ball screen template. They're going to switch it. And again, they're hunting this mismatch once they recognize that they have it here. All right, they're going to feed him on that lane line. And this is the advantage. A lot of people, think of advantages as being, I have to be by my guy, drawing a second defender with dribble penetration. An advantage can just be, I'm bigger and better than you, and I'm close to the basket, and you have to send help to stop me.
Yeah, and this is where we use our framework, which I would imagine Tyler Underwood would agree with it in watching through a lot of these clips, is that if you got a one-on-one and you can get it done, you better go do it. And so one-on-one, get it done. One-on-two, it's not for you. And that's kind of what you see out of some of these clips is the one-on-one might create a score, or it might create an advantage by putting 2 on the ball. And then it's just 1-on-2. It's not for you. Make a great decision, and you end up going from a small advantage to a big advantage to a bigger advantage, and you end up getting great shots. And the space on the floor with those spacing templates that you referenced, early on, the space on the floor creates a lot of those one-on-ones. The backside cutting and the turning of the dial by sneaking the baseline creates the space for those one-on-ones where it's really hard for a gap defender or a help side defender to commit without creating another offensive player that's going to be wide open and can take advantage of the new space that's been created.
Yeah, so Coach, I'll move on and get into some of the more complicated elements of this advantage creation progression that I'm in. But I wanted to flip it to you here before I do that, and I'd like you to talk about how do you get players to recognize when the advantage after it's been created, is it already good enough to be cashed in, or does it need transferred? When you're playing in a conceptual offense is trying to get players to be able to make decisions in that environment where you're able to create advantages and then you have the decision making behind it. And I know you're going to talk about shot selection here in an upcoming segment, but just talk about player recognition in terms of how good an advantage is and if it's ready to be cashed in or not.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to rep it. And so again, that's where the shot selection stuff comes in, which we'll talk about later, is like defining what kinds of shots you want to get on the front end so that you can grade it, you can stay process oriented, and you can just have it defined on the front end that like these are the types of shots that we want to get, and then you have to rep it a lot. And part of what I did in the off season was reading through the book The Talent Code, and one of the things it talks about is like the brain, as with any muscle, like if you rep something in your brain, like memory, recall, if you rep it multiple times, it wraps those nerve endings in a substance called myelin, and that allows the nerves to fire faster. And so you start to get guys' visual systems be able to recognize the advantages faster because they've seen it a lot. But you have to put them in those situations. So what's really challenging for coaches to figure out is what kind of situations is the defense going to put us in? You really have to be intentional about figuring those things out. Like, what kind of defense are you going to face? What positions are they going to put you in? And how can you rep it live as much as possible so that they can figure out a solution to every single one of those situations? And it's almost like it's second nature, because those decision-making nerve endings, they're just firing right away, where you see that help defender's front foot step even just one step. Now his energy is going in your direction, and you've already dumped the ball off to the dunker spot. Like, the decision is already made for you, and you're able to process it so much faster. And so I think the only way to do it is to define what you want to get at the end of a possession on the front end, and then rep the situations like crazy in practice. And so I think if you were to ask the Underwoods right now, they'd say they play a lot of live play in practice. They're playing live in practice all the time. They're looking at film. And they're grading things, but not coaching them like crazy in the moment. They're going to look at things on the back end and say, "What'd you see here? Here's how we graded this decision." And then they're starting to figure out, like, get positive feedback for the good things, get negative feedback for the things that aren't so good, and just build up that kind of callus of what's good and what's not.
Yeah, I love that. And I think you're absolutely right in thinking about starting with the end in mind. So I'm going to get back into advantage creation. We're going to get into some of these longer sequences of creating advantage and then transferring advantage, or maintaining the advantage, enlarging the advantage until it's time to cash in with a gold medal shot. But Coach, when you create an advantage and you're able to draw two, you're able to put two on the ball. Remind me of that saying that you guys have: 1-on-1, get it done. 1-on-2, go through that for me.
Yeah, we say 1-on-1, get it done. 1-on-2, it's not for you. So find the open man. Then we say 1-on-3, you can come sit by me. and then my players extended it to 1-on-4. There's the door, so you could just leave the gym. Or I went through a film session with them recently, and they came up with another 1-on-4 one. They said 1-on-4, get off the floor.
Yeah, I like that.
But I still haven't heard one that I think really sticks for 1-on-5 yet.
We had 1-on-5 from a commenter who was 1-on-5, take a hike. And I appreciate the initiative to comment in. If anybody's out there watching and they have a suggestion for the 1-on-5, drop that in the chat. Right now, it's tentatively set at 1-on-5, take a hike, but we're looking for better suggestions.
I'm open to suggestions.
Okay, so Coach, what we're doing right here and right now is this 1-on-2. It's not for you. So we're getting into kind of those clips right there, and we're going to start it the same way that we started the last reel, which is in transition. Same kind of element where we started our film reel where he drove the ball in transition and he just scored it right away. Here's another clip from that same game, same player. Boswell's getting in there. He's feeling the rim protector. He's collapsed the defense. He's got 2 defenders on him, and he's going to move the ball, transfer that advantage to find a direct, gold medal shot for us in transition. But here we are. We've got the ball screen that's going to put 2 on the ball right there. They're in a soft show. So we're transferring this advantage here. And now we've got some space. So what are we going to do with this space? Are we going to use that to shoot the ball? It might not be a gold medal shot if he launched that, if there was a pretty good contest by 17. But we can certainly use the threat of the shot to help us enlarge the advantage. So right now he's probably got a small advantage where he's got a short closeout to attack. He's going to use the threat of that shot fake to enlarge the advantage. And now this is where we can really get interesting, where we're making decisions. We're getting downhill. We draw that second defender. There's no help the helper from right here or right here. So we cash that thing in for a gold medal shot. So again, just working this this advantage creation. We can see here we've got this empty alignment that they go to for their ball screen template. So the empty is, we've got 3 guys on this far side of the on the near side of the court. On the far side of the court, we've got this 2-man game. We get a switch, a pretty easy switch from Maryland, who I think is actually in a matchup zone at this point. But they're going to just roll that advantage down to the block, and they're going to isolate and create space there. So, but once they identify we've got a mismatch, Maryland has to react to it before the ball even goes in there. So we've got an advantage here, which is going to pull all these players in here and create an advantage for us on the perimeter that, again, we can just keep capitalizing in because everybody's sucked in because they don't want this to happen down on the block. We've got an extra long closeout on the pass out. We enlarge the advantage by using that shot fake, getting into the teeth of the defense. And again, this is blender ball. This is the defense completely scrambling to catch up once you've got an advantage here. So again, same kind of concepts that we looked at in the same film reel as we identify. We've got a switching defense. We're going to switch a guard onto our big. We Barkley that down. This is an advantage, even though they haven't committed 2 to the ball yet. You do see 2 to the ball come, and now we're in. It's blender ball where we're moving it. He's catching and reading. Do I have the shot? If not, I'm looking to either drive it or swing it to the next guy. But we're transferring that advantage until we find that gold medal shot. So again, we're in our empty spacing template. We hit the slip here. We've got 2 on the ball here, so we move it quick. And now we're in a 4-on-3 situation. And this is, when we're playing a conceptual offense, this is what you're training for, is when you've got these situations where you have 4 offensive players and they have 3 defensive players, but you only have a split second to make decisions and figure it out. When you're playing a conceptual style, this is what you're training for, is for your players to be able to excel and to thrive in these situations. And obviously Illinois is really good at that, where they're just going to keep moving that ball until the defense, till they find their gold medal shot, because the defense can never really catch up here. So Coach, that was the film reel here. And really what I wanted to try to do, and hopefully I did it successfully, was just a basic demonstration of we're using these ball screens as a way to force the defense to make a decision. But the underlying factor in what we're trying to do offensively happens after we create that advantage. And the advantage can be, I'm head and shoulders past my guy and another defender needs to help, or it can just be, a mismatch situation where if the defense doesn't send help, it's going to be a bucket probably one way or another. Coach, any thoughts on the advantage creation segment there?
Yeah, I mean the only other thing I would add is I think what's really impressive is both the templates for spacing and the understanding of spacing that has clearly been taught to the players was already innate with the players. Makes it really clear what the decision framework is. So it makes it really predictable where the help is coming from. It makes it really predictable who's going to be open on the next one. So I think that's where you see like clarity in decision making from the players. Like you don't see guys in between on their cuts. You don't see guys in between on spacing from the wing to the corner. They know exactly what to do based on their penetration, read and react principles, and then also based on what ball screen spacing they're in. So we talk about it with our guys about you need to be reliable off the ball. Like when we take a baseline drive, we need somebody in that opposite corner filled as a pressure release. We need the ball screen popping behind and filling behind in the taillights, and we need a 45 cut down the center of the court so that that guard can go try to win a one-on-one, and when the second defender comes over, it's already clear what your options are. You got opposite corner, you got 45, you got look back in the taillights. Like the decisions are already defined for you. Now we're just going to rep them. And those spacing templates allow for those decisions to just be repped over and over again. And what you end up on film with is a team that looks so freaking connected on the court.
Yeah, it's not an accident that those are the spacing templates that Illinois chose for their ball screen actions, because they're all three ones that just provide the ball a lot of space to work that two-man game. So a couple questions coming from Instagram. What's the difference between transferring an advantage and simply passing? I would say that the difference is, passing is neutral to neutral. The defense at neutral, we're just moving the ball from one station to another. Transferring an advantage is we've created an advantage and we're trying to make decisions in mind that lead to directly to shots or directly for opportunities for us to, enlarge or maintain that advantage.
Yeah, and I would also say that 4-on-3 clip that you showed where Merkovich is making a great decision, if you look really closely at it, you see him look to the corner, the defender drops, and then he passes to the top of the key. And so again, I think that's a little bit of that difference between he could have passed it to the corner and probably still could have gotten the ball there without the defender stealing it. But he wouldn't have had an advantage. He created an advantage by looking off the corner and then throwing top of the key, and it created a wide open shot instead of a kick out that already had somebody closing out on him.
Yeah, Coach. Also coming in from Instagram, and we'll move on to shot selection after this. How quickly does hesitation kill an advantage? And I would say, that goes back to, that initial history lesson that you gave us, Coach, where we saw those coaches who were kind of the forward thinking for a lot of the ideas that, we paint as modern basketball, and Coach Popovich, where he had those Spurs teams and he brought that 0.5 decision making kind of into prominence there. And I think that's what you're looking for. It's not that you always have to be boom ready to go as soon as you catch it, but you don't have more than 0.5 or 1 second to think about it. You want to be making airtime decisions where when the ball's in the air coming to you, you're figuring out what to do. You don't want to be catching it, holding it, and thinking about what to do. So I think, that 0.5 decision making is a great, point for understanding how hesitations kill advantages. You don't want to catch it and hold it. You got to figure it out. Usually when the ball's in flight, to you, and you're usually playing off your shot, catch and shoot, catch and drive, or shot fake to enlarge an advantage there.
Yeah, and
Coach, go ahead.
I think honestly that the hesitation that kills advantages is the hesitation on roll pop decisions and on cuts off the ball. Because usually when you decide to drive it, you're not really in between. You've made your decision, you're going. And so I feel like it's the off the ball cutting that needs to be really decisive, the off the ball decisions that need to be really decisive, because when somebody's cut on the perimeter is indecisive, then it makes it difficult to fix the spacing. Whereas if they're decisive, we tell our guys, like, the only wrong decision you can make within our offense is being indecisive. You can have the worst cut at the worst possible moment, but if you're decisive, everybody else can fix it on the backside if we get to our spots. So you can fix the spacing with decisiveness. It's tough to fix the spacing with indecisive things happening on the perimeter.
Yeah, Coach, coming in from Facebook here. If you had to pick one principle from the Underwood system, implement it tomorrow with a completely different team, which principle would you choose and why? For me, the advantage creation. I know we were just talking about it. Maybe that's why I'm fired up about it. But I think from a high school coach's lens, the positionless basketball, I feel like is kind of a dream from the high school coach's lens, as opposed, you'd have to be really working towards that to develop the skills. Advantage creation I just see a lot of high school basketball teams that are stuck in neutral and their running patterns, and their players don't recognize it even when they do have advantages. So I would say advantage creation, but I also think the shot selection stuff, which I know we're transitioning into right now with you, Coach, is huge for high school basketball, because
Totally.
you get a lot of really bad shots going up at high school, and you can win games you can win a lot of games at the high school level just by taking better shots than your opponents,
Yep.
especially games where there's similar in talent. If it's similar in talent and one team takes better shots than the other team, the team that takes the better shots is probably going to win. So I don't know, Coach, if you want to weigh in or just jump right into your gold, silver, bronze shot selection here.
Yeah, if I were to hop into a completely different team right now, I'd probably think either shot selection, or we're going to get to it at the very end, is tag ups. Because especially thinking of the high school level, like you walk into a new school and you get all those football players coming off the football field and say, "Hey guys, every time a shot goes up, I want you to hit people and just go attack the ball and see if we can create extra possessions. And if you can win the possession battle, and win the rebounding battle, you give yourself a chance to win a lot of games. And it's pretty simple to implement. Like, if you can get a bunch of athletes, even if they're not amazing, skilled basketball players, you can install tagging up. And again, we'll talk about it later, but you can install tagging up and just create a super aggressive, full court defensive team that's just being menaces with offensive rebounds.
Good stuff, Coach. Okay, we're going to dive into shot selection next. So, Coach, you're on the clock, and I'm helping you along the way. But we're going, gold, silver, bronze shot selection.
Yeah, and actually, I'm going to unshare this film because I want to show a graphic first.
Okay.
So let me pull that up real quick with their kind of framework for shot selection. So.
Yeah, with shot selection, I'm interested to hear this because I've always been a PGC shot selection guy, and they've got a scale where it's, nines and sevens and fives and things like that. So the gold, silver, bronze, I think is interesting to learn it in kind of a different way with some of a similar kind of takeaway.
Yeah, and in terms of the gold, silver, bronze, I don't think there's anything like groundbreaking about it. There are lots of different frameworks that you can use. I think Nate Oates at Alabama uses like green light shooting. So green light, yellow light, red light. It's the same idea. I think what's important is having clarity. And that's what they've achieved with their gold medal system. I think it actually comes from Alex Sarama and Transforming Basketball, who came up with the podium. He calls it podium shooting, or the shot selection podium. But again, it's not like a groundbreaking system, but it does create clarity that like these are the shots that we want to take. We want to take advantage layups, which is going to be a gold medal. We want to take money threes, which is like balanced and open. And they define money threes differently for different guys. So like Keaton Wagler might have a different money three than Andre Stojakovic. So gold is advantage layups and money threes. Silver is those logo twos. So just outside, being right at the rim. And you'll see like some of those push shots as well. Contested and balanced threes. You'll see some of those in the clips as well. And then bronze is tough twos, ISOs, and late clock threes. And then what's interesting down here, obviously turnovers, no medal. But then what's interesting below it is where they say off balance or out of rhythm or forced demotes your medal. It takes it from a silver to a bronze. It takes it from a bronze to a no medal. So I thought that was interesting. But this is what Illinois has posted in their practice gym, their shot selection podium. And what I have underneath it is that's their shot attempts from this past season. So what you can see is, again, there's clarity in their decision making. Like this is clearly talked about every single day in their practices, every single day in their film sessions, and it's reflected in the decisions that they make on the court. That 54% of the time they're shooting a three on the perimeter, 28% of the time they're shooting a shot at the rim, and then non-rim in the paint or non-paint twos is 12% and 7% of the time. So over 80% of their shots are having a chance to be gold medal, advantage layups, or money threes. And that's like clearly analytics based, points per shot, points per chance based. That's what the PPC is, points per chance. It's like the expected value of the shot based on what shot they got. And it creates what we talked about. Like I talk about it in teaching all the time because I'm a teacher in high school, and we talk about having backwards design. Start with the end in mind. What kind of shot do you want to get? Define that first. Then you can give freedom on offense and just say, you guys are free to make decisions that are good for you within our spacing templates, but you got to end with one of these. And it makes it a lot easier to make it process driven instead of outcome driven. So you can sit in a film session and say like, yeah, you made this really tough too, but it got graded as bronze. And so I think they said that they graded all of their scrimmages in the off season, not off of points scored, but off of expected points based on the shot that they took. So they might give 1 point for a bronze, 2 points for a silver, 3 points for a gold. And whether it was a make or miss, that's how they scored their scrimmages. So again, it keeps it extremely process oriented instead of worrying about, did I make or miss the shot? It's worrying about, are we getting good shots, and then trusting that the outcomes are going to take care of themselves.
So Coach, you've told us kind of what makes up a gold, silver or bronze shot. And you also talked about, which I really liked, is, the value of the system. It gives this kind of shared language between the players where it's just not, that's a good shot or that's a bad shot, is that we can simply evaluate the shot selection through this kind of lens. And the PGC one is similar where you have a number value associated to it. But this, with just having the three medals, it makes it even simpler than the PGC system. So, Coach, you've got a video here where I think we're going to do some video examples on the shot selection. I got that queued up for you.
Yeah, and I mixed in some of the different shots. I just mixed in some of those gold, silver, and bronze. I figure we can take a guess at what some of them are as we're going through it. I don't want to spend a ton of time because we want to keep rolling through some of these, but again, they describe money threes as like a money three is a little bit different for each player, but the goal is certain outcomes. And so they're searching for balanced shots on the perimeter, balanced and open shots on the perimeter, and shots at the rim. And it's shots like these, like those late clock, longer twos that, you might be getting bronze shots. What I thought was interesting is that some of the worst shots that they took generally came against the worst teams that they played. So like early on in the year when they played Long Island or some of those other non-Division I teams
Yeah.
early in the season. And I would imagine that they were just getting ripped in film sessions afterwards about like, hey, it doesn't matter whether you can make this shot against a bad team. We're trying to build habits to get to a Final Four. And to get to a Final Four, we need to be taking great shots regardless of the opponent. And so they're searching for those gold medal shots, those down, balance, and open shots. And again, what I appreciate about the system is that it just creates clarity for decision making. That like I would imagine, again, they probably have some players at times, and that's probably a silver right there, like a non or like a logo 2, but it's open. But I would imagine you have players that might take a shot at some point and then come out of the game. They're like, yeah, I know that was a bronze. Like, but it creates clarity and also the ability to hold players accountable to a certain standard for decision making.
Yeah, I immediately think back to my playing days in college where, you'd mentioned some of those early season games where they were the prohibitive favorite and the shot selection was of lower quality. I could think of games where, we were big favorites in the game and I knew I probably wasn't going to play a lot in the second half. So my standard for what was a good shot went a little bit lower because I knew if I was going to get some shots, they needed to come in the first half. So I can relate to that. Coach, a couple questions. I'll pass both of these off to you as our shot selection expert. First, we've got from Instagram, Pusateri3. This is Sam Pusateri. I coached him at St. Thomas Aquinas. Sam was actually my first point guard ever when I was a 26-year-old head coach. Sam was my first point guard, and we transitioned him off the ball. He's played the wing for us in year 2 when we made it to the state finals, and now Sam is a coach himself. But Sam asks, how would you feel about having players rank shot selections in film and allow them to assess their own shots?
Yeah, I mean, if I already have the framework in place, I think them defining it for themselves is way more impactful than me defining it. The only thing I would say is I probably wouldn't let them rank each other. I'd have them rank themselves because I think that could get a little hairy. But it depends on the dynamics of your team. Every coach's team, every team has some different dynamics. So you got to decide what's right for you. I think that's great though. Like what you need though is you just need clarity. And if there's clarity, then you get to start allowing your players to be the leaders. And so they can take a look in a film session and be like, and you could pause the film and say, what do you guys think? What was that? And they can grade their own shots. I think that sticks a lot better than you just mandating like, yeah, that's a crappy shot and we need to get a better one.
Yeah, Coach. So last one before we move on to our next segment. But Coach, from Facebook, do you believe good shot selection is primarily a product of player decision-making, or can a well-designed offensive system actually train players into making better shot selection decisions?
Well, I think we talked about it a little bit with the spacing templates. Like the spacing templates gives the ball enough space where you can create advantages, and then because the drive decisions, like the penetration reaction decisions, are already defined, there's clarity within the system, then it makes decision making a little more clear as well. So I think a well-designed offensive system just makes it really clear what decisions should be made for players. Some players have just unbelievable feel for decision making. I had a point guard a couple of years ago who I could have put them in the worst offense possible, and he was still going to make good decisions because that's just the player that he was. But I think being able to give the ball space and define exactly where your off-ball players are going to be and have them trained to reliably be there makes it a lot easier to coach decision-making and to get better shot selections because it's already defined where the open man is, and you just have to see where the help comes from and then, fire it in. We always talk about throwing strikes. Like you got to throw strikes. The passing is really important as well. But I definitely think a well-designed offensive system can help with training better shot selection decisions.
Yeah, Coach, we're going to move into screen deception here. Screen deception. And I thought the best way to really appreciate the deception that Illinois presents with their ball screen was to kind of cue up the gold standard here, which is the Stockton and Malone pick and roll. And, this is one of the greatest combinations of pick and roll ever. Everybody knew it was coming. They were still incredible at it. But just watching through this from like a modern basketball lens, not just the execution, but the environment that they're operating for these pick and rolls. The slow development really stands out where it's like, Malone comes plodding up from the baseline and they get organized. Stockton's like backing his defender down to wait for the screen to come. The action develops very deliberately. Everybody on the court knows that they're going to go to this, and they had the ability to dominate, even though everybody knew exactly what they were going to. But a lot of these pick and rolls, they're inside the 3-point line. It's completely different geometry than today's kind of extended pick and roll game. You won't probably see any pick and rolls or ball screens from Illinois that are inside the 3-point line. The backside spacing, when you look at these, you've got players packed inside the arc on the backside. It's clogged and jammed, certainly by modern standards. You got maybe a stagger happening on the backside to keep the defense busy, but there's just so much less space around the two-man game that's happening. And there is some slips in this. I did watch this, but there's a lot more contact on the ball screen from Malone and Stockton than you see in Illinois. Illinois, there's so much time where there's not even contact between the on-ball defender because they're flipping the screen and driving the other way. They're rejecting it altogether. So, Coach, what are kind of your, before we unleash this Illinois film and look how they use deception with their ball screens, what's your kind of take on, watching this two-man game action here and know that this has been, for 30 or 40 years, this is the best pick and roll, example a lot of coaches would use?
Yeah, I mean, two things, like one where it's incredible and one where I think it's a little bit it can be a little outdated. Is where it's incredible is for the same reasons that Tyler Underwood talks about their screening, is that they're going to run the same thing, but they might do it 20 different ways. And you can see that in the clips here where the angles of the screens, deciding to reject it and then hitting the roll, deciding to pop, all those different things, messing with the angles a little bit or the ways that you roll, the ways that you pop to create passing lanes. Like they're doing the same thing over and over again, but it's not the exact same way every single time. The template is the same, but there's small intricacies that are different each time. And so again, it's that complicate the simple that I think is pretty timeless. You see it in so many other offenses at the NBA and college level now. And then where it may be a little more outdated is the spacing, but then also, like you said, the level of contact that happens. And I think a lot of that has to do with coaches stressing pace from action to action, but then also stressing that sometimes you don't need to make contact to create an advantage. The advantage is created just by the threat of the screen, and or just by the flip, and you're forcing somebody to drop their top foot, or by running straight at them and ghosting it, and they drop their top foot, and now you've created an advantage. So the understanding that an advantage doesn't always mean connecting on the screen. It can mean a bunch of other things. So that I think there are just some more ways to complicate the simple now.
Yeah, so we'll pivot into Illinois, how they're running their ball screens, and this is just a reel that's examples of different ways they get into their ball screen action. But Coach, we watched the Utah Jazz, Stockton Malone. Now we're watching Illinois. It's still ball screen basketball, but a lot of the assumptions that we assumed through the Utah Jazz film about how the screen is going to be delivered, now it's all kind of negotiable in these clips where you're trying to figure out who's going to be the screener because they're sprinting from different locations to set the screen. They're dragging right into it. Where is the screen location going to be? It's not just going to be in that one same spot where Stockton and Malone ran so many of their pick and rolls. When is the ball screen coming? What the angle is it? Which direction are they going to go? Will there even be contact from the screen? So much of this is just negotiable in this system where they're not dead set on doing it one way, and the variability of it is the biggest threat. And just like you were saying, Coach, there doesn't even have to be actual contact on the screen for it to be effective, and oftentimes it's even more effective when there is not. What kind of differences strike you in watching this film as opposed to watching that Utah Jazz film?
Yeah, again, I think it's just about how quickly you can create an advantage. The other thing that I'm so impressed with, especially with college coaches, like you don't really see it as much at the high school level. Things stay pretty simple with the way you get into ball screens, but the way they mask actions to get to the ball screen, and that might even manipulate who's guarding who before the ball screen ever even happens. So you'll see things like horns flare into a ball screen, and you might cause a switch off the ball before that screen even happens. You'll see ram into a ball screen. You'll see a stagger away or an Iverson into a ball screen. So there are different ways to like mask flying up into it. And then the other thing that I think is really cool that Illinois does, and you could see it. That clip is a perfect example where the screener just kind of floats around the defender, like exploring the angle a little bit. And that's just so hard to guard. Like, what do you do when the screener is just kind of floating, and then boom, setting it, or floating, and then, they slipped out for a three. It's just really, really tough. And that's another example where he's like floating, flipping, just kind of like dancing around that defender, never really making contact, and then boom, decides to make contact. And it's just really, really, really tough to guard.
If your ball screen coverage relies on the screener's defender getting to the level of the screen on a certain side of it, just forget about it, because they're just going to keep working that situation until they find you on the wrong side of it. I think the one thing that neither one of us has mentioned in talking about this screen deception is, kind of the point of all this is really to mess with the communication of the defense, where even if they're calling something, they can still be wrong with their coverage, but these evolve quickly, and they really challenge just the communication between the two players in the ball screen. And I believe Illinois is even able to use that communication against the defense, where if they start talking about the screens on this side, all of a sudden it's flipped, and now the screen is not on this side. So, Coach, anything else about this screen deception concept as an element of modern basketball?
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine they might be saying things like, right when you hear them calling out left, flip it. Like, the little things like that. Use the defense's communication against them. But yeah, I don't know if I have much more to add other than, again, I mentioned it on our last stream that it's easy for people to say, people just don't play defense anymore. It's a lot more complicated to explain that this is really, really hard to guard. And coming up with new defensive solutions for it is really difficult. You have to figure out a way to dictate where the ball goes, and it requires you having unbelievable defenders on the ball that are saying, I'm only going to give you one way to go. and then you're able to get up into your ball screen coverage once it's defined which way the ball is going to go. But if you're never able to pin it one way or the other, then you can't really define where your coverage is, and they can toy with you all day long.
Yeah, I firmly believe that if we could define what the ball screen is, me and you could sit here and we could devise a great defensive plan, and we could go teach it to players, and we could stop ball screens. But you can't really define what they're doing because of the variability of how they're getting into it, how quickly they're getting into it, the angles change. And even if you do play defense, like, they're going to make you play really good defense 3 times because they're going to run the high ball screen to a pop, and then they're going to go connective tissue right into their empty game and make you guard another one. And it's just kind of a nonstop keeping pressure on your defense to communicate and execute in all these screening situations. So, Coach, Stockton and Malone, they've mastered that pick and roll when everybody knew where it was coming and roughly what it was going to be. But Illinois, they're still relying on the fundamental relationship of this ball screen. But now we can get these ball screens that come from anywhere. They change angles, they arrive at speed, they flip on a dime, they get rejected, they get ghosted, they never make contact at all. And it's like, the ball screen offense, it certainly hasn't disappeared, but it's certainly the surroundings of it have completely exploded, and the nuance and the tweaks are just so much more advanced, as it should be, from basketball from 30 or 40 years ago. So, Coach, that's screen deception, and I think you're going to take us on a journey about attacking switch next.
Yeah, and I think it kind of flows right into it pretty naturally, is that you talk about how it's gotten a little more complicated with the ways they're setting the screens, and there's a reason it gets more complicated. Again, like I mentioned at the beginning, that constraints lead to creativity, and some of the constraints are, like, some people came up with some really good ball screen coverages. Like, I can imagine the first team that saw a hard hedge was just like, what do we do? Yeah. And we talk about it before, facing an ice on a wing ball screen, and we're like, whoa, what's all this?
I had a coach on a legacy show maybe a few weeks ago, and he has 45 years of coaching experience. And I was asking him about what fads in coaching did you try and not like? And he was like, when we first tried the pick and roll, it was just, we had no idea how to teach it, how to execute it. We tried that and we scrapped that so fast. And he's seen all of this come, and now get it to the point where it's at now. Sorry to interrupt you, Coach.
No, I mean, it's like the new offensive solutions come from really good defensive coaches figuring some things out. And one of those ways that defensive coaches have figured out how to blow up actions on the ball, 2-man actions like a pick and roll, is by switching. And so they do some pretty interesting things to attack switches that we mention with some of the advantage creation stuff.
Is your film ready, Coach?
It is ready. Yeah,
okay.
I think it's in there. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and play it, but I'll talk through some of the things that they do. Obviously, on a switch, they hunt mismatches. So, like, you'll see them hunting mismatches. You'll see them toying with the angles of the screens to force emergency switches. Like, sometimes they want those switches. And we talked about it on the last show that, like, some of those switches don't look like they're by design. It looks like they're forced because of the angles of the screens. So they'll toy around with trying to force switches. They'll mess with matchups. So, like, when they get the matchup they want, they may go at that. But what was really interesting, and this is an example of it, is they love to use non-shooters off the ball stampeding when their defenders would start to sink on the 2-man action. They also love to get a switch and then immediately go with a ghost with somebody else once they have the beard on them. So they would get the beard one-on-one, exactly where they wanted it with a switch, and then they'd fly in with a ghost just to create that initial advantage. But I really like the way, like, this is a good example where You see they're starting to sink off the non-shooter and just give just enough space for him to attack and stampede closeouts. So I was really interested by the ways that they used non-shooters to attack off the ball stuff. Because again, like as a high school coach, it's pretty easy to define and say like, hey guys, this kid's not a great shooter, so we're not really going to guard him on the 3-point line, and we're going to sink on all their other players and make sure we take them away. But Andrei Stojakovic was such a strong driver that when they got switches and they tried to load up helping off of him because he wasn't a great 3-point shooter, and this is a good example of the switch and then ghost, which I'll go back to. But then they would just like pitch it to Andrei Stojakovic and he'd be downhill. He'd have a head of steam going right at you and either put a shoulder in your chest or find an angle getting to the rim really aggressively. So I thought that was really interesting, the way they used off-ball stuff to get into attacking the switches. And go ahead, Coach.
What I can't get over is Peja Stojakovic's son is somehow the least capable shooter in a college basketball rotation, and he can make a three. He makes threes. He's definitely he's an exceptional driver to the basket. But I just can't get over Peja Stojakovic's son being the weak link from an outside shooting standpoint on any team.
I know, right? It's funny how that works. But yeah, here's an example of they get the switch that they want. They get a big on the guard. They've kind of peeled off with a guard on the big. And now it's, okay, how do we manipulate the space? How do we attack the advantage? Because he might still have length to be able to contest a shot and be able to stay in front. He might have just enough foot speed to be able to stay in front and contest a shot. But what they love doing is getting the switch that they want, kind of slowing things a little bit, and then sending another guard with a ghost screen. So not allowing another switch back, but still creating some kind of advantage or open space.
Yeah, a couple of things that I think are interesting here is, as a high school coach, we all want to be able to exploit mismatches. And the struggle really becomes recognizing it and acting on it quickly. And that's where I think Illinois is just exceptional, is that when they get one of these switches, they go after it. A lot of times in high school, we're slow to recognize a mismatch, and then we stand there and hold the ball until the whole defense has now flooded the area, and we're trying to force the ball in where, the defense is maybe even already pre-rotated inside or something like that. Illinois, just exceptional at recognizing that they have the mismatch and then going after it in a relentless fashion. And then the other thing is, we tend to think of mismatches, maybe one way or the other. If a big switches onto our guard, we're going to, dribble around them. Illinois, absolutely exceptional at recognizing when they've got, the mouses in the house, and they go after them. And I think it certainly helps that when you're going to be the biggest team in about every game that you play,
yep.
You can really have that top of mind. If you've only got one big guy, then, the situations aren't as prevalent as when Illinois, but, they've got the Barkley action. They've certainly got just, they're going to ball screen and just kind of roll into the lane and post up in there. But they've recognized those, and they attack them both inside and out. I think a lot of people would assume a lot of this switching is Keaton Wagler, attacking people off the dribble, but their bigs are probably even more effective because the interior shots are just, they're very high efficiency shots to get around the rim and to draw fouls.
Yeah, and a couple of the other interesting things that I saw from them, and this is why I was rolling this clip back earlier, is you might not notice it early because when you're thinking about the switch, you're thinking about what's happening. You're just thinking about what's happening on the ball. But they set this early screen and they force a switch with a guard switching onto the big. And then they're immediately moving the ball. And they don't take advantage of it right away. But one of the things that I found was interesting about them is that if they get a guard on their big that's rolling, they'll sit their big in the dunker spot so that the help side is a little guard. And they'll leave that little guard in help. So they'll sit that guy in the dunker spot there. They'll sit him on the weak side, and you actually see this is my favorite part about this clip is that Jake Davis is the one that recognizes it. He sees the switch, they swing it. He's not able to create an advantage right away, and he'll pass it. And then you'll see the big get out to the perimeter, and then he points to him and says, "Get back down in the dunker spot, keep your guy in help." And then Keaton Wagler is able to get an advantage. So like watch him point after he passes. He's like, "Get down there, and we're going to set a screen." And so he's saying, push out, push in, attack it, dump off, score. Like, I think that's incredible. Like that. It seems it's not easy to recognize right away because your eyes kind of move towards the ball. It's easy to watch the ball, but Jake Davis really impressed me with the way he communicated off the ball so that those switches were taken advantage of really quickly.
Yeah, I think that's next level. A lot of coaches would just be thrilled if their players could recognize and attack a mismatch, let alone, try to manipulate who's going to be in the help position once they do attack it. So, Coach, any final thoughts here on attacking the switch?
Yeah, there were two more that I was thinking about that they look to do, and the other one is, this is what we talk about with our guys all the time, and we try to simplify it in this way, is that we want to force the over on screens and then race the switch to the rim. Mm-hmm. And what's impressive about them is all the action that they get before they get into just a simple ball screen. So they're getting the defense moving first. But you'll see he forces the over and then either seals him or races him to the rim, like force the over and then race the switch to the rim. So they'll race the switch to the rim. They'll also seal switches sometimes on the top side. So they'll force the over and then seal the switch. I think that was actually one of your ghost clips as well, is the way that they mess with things there. And then using turndowns. They love to use turndowns to attack switching defenses. When they start to see that switching defender step up on the high side, then they'll go ahead and like turn it down really quickly if they can get their defender on the ball squared. And I'm trying to see if we can find that. That's another one where they're rolling they get the beard, they get number 2 on the ball. That's exactly who they want. And then they fly at him with some ghost screens. So whenever they have the beard on them, they never set screens again. They just start ghosting all over the place. They're like, we don't want to force the next switch. We force the one that we want. We don't want to get another one. We just want to create confusion.
Yeah, so interesting, and I don't know that there's a better team at attacking switches than Illinois. The more and more film, it just seems like the priority that they place on it is so evident, and then the effectiveness of it is undeniable.
And this is the one where he's forcing the over and sealing. So he's sealing on that switch. Again, force the over on the screen and then just hold him on the high side. He's not letting him get underneath. So like you talked on our last stream talking about my offense is the jam and under, where he's not allowing the jam and under. Let the switch happen. Make sure you force the over and don't let that guy get back around. And he's able to seal and get a really good angle to the basket.
All right, Coach, the next segment here that we're going to get into is the offense never stops. So I'm going to present this, and, whether Illinois gets the mismatch that they want or the defense successfully takes something away, one of the things that I really love about studying this system is that it feels like it never really has to start over. And I think that comes down to 3 things that we're going to talk about in this session, which is how fast they're able to transition and flow into their ball screen templates. So if we, a reminder of these 3 spacing templates, they're racing up the court, and we'll see them race up the court and enter into all of these ball screen templates, with great quickness. But they're also able to transition from one of these spacing templates to another. We had talked about earlier where they run the high ball screen, they pop and they throw it to the pop, and then they immediately get, dribble handoff into an empty side ball screen. They're able to go not only from acquiring the ball, racing the ball up the court into these templates, but they're able to go from, spread to empty or high to empty very quickly. And the third element of this with their offense, feeling like it doesn't stall out, is the idea of this re-trigger. I had Coach Tristan Winkleman on not too long ago, and he was talking about this fix-it offense where he was working with his players on when they get stuck in neutral, just some very basic things they could do to try to create kind of a cheap advantage. And Illinois does that very well. So just to kick things off here, Coach, we're going to look at these transition pushes, and we'll see one from or a couple from each of these different formations. But what we really want to point out here is, they're advancing the ball up the court, and they're immediately into these spacing templates fairly easily. And, old school basketball, we dribble the ball right up the middle of the court. We put one finger up in the air to call out our play, and then we make the pass from the point to the wing. Modern basketball is this kind of stuff. Multiple spacing templates, being able to flow into them, as we advance up the court, being able to play advantage basketball in transition first and foremost, and then kind of decelerating into any of these spacing templates. But when, we're talking about what is modern basketball, it is not the point guard goes to the top of the key and passes the ball to the wing to start an offense. It's this stuff. It is we push the ball, we look for advantages. If there's no advantages, we're immediately drag screening, or we're immediately making an entry pass that flows directly into a ball screen. We're not calling out our plays or things of that nature. What impresses you about how quickly they organize into these spacing templates, Coach?
Yeah, I think it points to their identity as a team, which is just never let your foot off the gas. Constantly attack. Don't give the defense a break. And we'll see that in the next segment as well with tag ups. It's like closing the gap between those transition periods, whether it's transition from offense to defense or transition from action to action. Like, how much can we close that gap? And we talk about it with my team as well. Again, like similar 5-out ball screen motion. The spacing templates are slightly different. The cutting principles are slightly different, but it's a similar idea. And what we're constantly telling our guys is, like, we never want to pull the ball out and say reset. We want to keep pressure on the defense, because again, like the defense's initial ball screen coverage might be really solid, but it's the third, fourth, fifth one that they're going to make a mistake on if we keep pace from one action to the next. So making it so that we're shortening the transition periods when we're getting from one action to the next, and trying to figure out some way to get them in the blender quickly, or put them, go from one step behind to 2 or 3 steps behind with their coverage. I think that's what it's all about, is just eliminate. I think I heard a coach say, we're eliminating the pauses in the game. So they want to eliminate every pause in the half court. Don't pause the ball. And then when we get to tag ups, like, that's the pause between transition with offense and defense. Like, how can we eliminate that pause as well? And so I think it aligns with what they try to do from an identity standpoint.
Yeah, we got comment in Illinois and Underwood completely sell out for offensive skill. It turbocharges the offense, but leaves the defense vulnerable. Modern basketball requires versatile defenders as well, not just offense. That is a good point, and I think that what they're going for the most is the skill with positional size, and I think not that there is not an emphasis on defense, but if we could recruit to, if all these teams could just recruit to 100% on skill and positional size and defense and, every other thing, I'm sure that they would, but we gotta have some sacrifices.
And I think, again, it goes towards identity. Like, what's your identity? Are you fully committing to it? and is your team buying into it? And they've fully committed to a certain identity, and their team is fully bought into it. I would also push back on that a little bit. They were one of the more efficient defenses in the country, not with causing turnovers, but with rebounding the ball and with getting stops. Like they were a pretty efficient defense. And they also beat one of, if not the best defensive teams in the country in Houston in the tournament. And, you know, the realities of the modern game is you got to put the ball in the basket. And then you got to figure out a way to stop them enough. Like you don't necessarily have to win the game defensively, but you got to figure out how to stop them enough. I think that was one thing Coach Olin said with his New Mexico stuff is like, we're going to put up 80 to 85 a game. And so he turns to his defensive assistant. He's like, can you figure out a way to hold him to 75? That's like, you figure out ways to win. And I think what Brad Underwood has shown is like, no matter where he goes, he's figured out a way to win. And so he's committed to that identity. And then he went from being like the most aggressive full court defensive team ever in Stephen F. Austin with, playing full court defense to being a team that's like in drop coverage every single possession and sagging off. But instead of creating extra possessions with turnovers, they create extra possessions with offensive rebounds. And we'll see that in the tag up segment too.
Yeah, so Coach, sticking with this offense never stops segment, we just watched how quickly they flow into those ball screen templates. Now we're getting into, we saw that there's really no setup to enter their offense unless it's an ATO, and they'll run a set play package. But, we looked at how fast they can get into their offenses. We talked about how they can attack kind of while they're organizing, and how defensively the offense is trying to organize faster than the defense, because we know how much more effective teams typically are in transition. Well, how do we create more of those situations where the defense is disorganized? Well, we've got to get up the court and get organized. And if the offense can organize quicker than the defense, then you're adding extra possessions here and there that are just like transition, just based on your pace. But what we're really looking at here for this segment, Coach, is the two different things. And you see them in some of these clips. Both elements are prevalent in both of these clips. So what we're looking at here is these different spacing templates. We've got the high, we've got the spread, and we've got the empty. And oftentimes they're able to start in empty, and then like this clip, they're going to go empty. Then they're going to move it into Dallas, which is the empty to top pick and roll. And then the third element of this is, okay, we've ran our two pick and rolls or our two ball screens, and we have no advantage. We're in neutral. So what are we going to do? A lot of high school teams are like, okay, we need to reorganize. We're going to take the ball to the top of the key. We're going to call out a new play. We're going to get everybody in their spot. But this is where, Illinois, playing more of a conceptual style, they're just getting into a retrigger where they're going to go with these pass and follow or these ghost screens just to try to create a little bit of an advantage to attack. And that's how it feels like the offense kind of never really stalls out, where you've got players like Jake Davis, where he's primarily a gravity shooter, but he's also great in this retrigger game where he's able to just, when he feels like the possession is stalling, he's just going to sprint at Keaton Wagler's guy and then go screen out of the way and try to create some indecision. So here we're looking again, empty side, Dallas into the retrigger. But we're seeing in these clips that we're not only moving from spacing template to spacing template, but we're also able to find possessions when they're starting to stall out and, flip them into some kind of way to maybe potentially create kind of a cheap advantage with the get game or with the ghost screens.
Yeah, and I love the way that you'll notice in a lot of these clips, they go from generally they try to get into 3 low spacing with their ball screen stuff where they'll sit somebody opposite dunker. So you'll see like Merkovich sneak into the dunker spot. They get low, but then I love the way that every retrigger seems to be a corner to wing flash and then like pop right back to him and ghost screen it. and then they're getting into an empty side, or somebody again like turning the dial, getting good spacing on the back end of it. But it happens so fast, and I feel like you said, Jake Davis and number 3, I don't want to mispronounce his name. I think Ben Humrinchus. I think that's right.
I'm not sure.
I shouldn't have even tried. But yeah, number 3 and number 15, like they're often the ones that are re-triggering with ghosts, or like pass and follow and then ghost screen it. And so I love the way that they go from like 3 low. Let's see if we can create a 2-man game advantage with our spacing. And when we don't, let's flash up to the wing and then immediately get into those re-triggers you're talking about.
Yeah, to me, all this stuff is this whole segment is how do we keep pressure on the
Yep.
defense? How do we not have these points where it feels like there's nothing happening or the defense isn't at an advantage? You know, sometimes you'll see in these games where like the defense can get momentum, not necessarily by taking the ball away from the other team and going and laying it in, but
Just
just
by
standing
stalling
up.
them.
Yeah, standing up to them, and you can see like a team get confidence and get momentum just from like locking up a team for a possession or something like that. And this system where you've got these 3 elements where we're going to put pressure on you because we're going to race the ball up the court off of misses and turnovers and fill into our spacing templates and flow right into our ball screens. And then, okay, you can guard one of our ball screens. Well, how about we do three consecutively with no lag in between?
Yep.
How can you keep up with that? Oh, you've kept up with that. Well, we've got these kind of re-triggers that we can go to just as a final check to make sure that we might be able to pop you with some miscommunication and find a shot that we need.
Yeah, and then when nothing else works, we're going to toss it into Merkovich, and he's going to back you all the way down from the wing to the block, or we're going to throw it to Andrei Stojakovic, and he's going to stampede and go straight through your chest, or Keaton Wagler is going to find a little angle and step back on you, or get all the way to the rim in a one-on-one. It's really, really hard to guard no matter what.
Yeah, Wagler, not a bad end of clock player, but these re-triggers. It's really about a solution to stagnation in offense, and I think at the high school level, some states have shot clocks, some don't. I think the states that do have a shot clock, they have to have at least some consciousness of avoiding the stagnation before they start to feel some of the pressure of the clock. Some of the high school states that don't have a shot clock, coaches don't really have to emphasize that as much, but certainly with where the game is going, you don't want to have these times where the possessions feel like they've stalled out and we have to reorganize after we've already tried 3 different ways to score the ball. So coach, any closing thoughts on the offense never stops, covering these 3 different elements of flowing quickly into these spacing templates out of transition, flowing from template to template, and also using re-triggers to try to generate a cheap advantage when we're getting a little stagnant?
Yeah, I mean, again, I continue to come back to the word clarity. There's simplicity and there's clarity, and when there's simplicity and there's clarity, then decision making can happen really fast. And then like they can know what's coming. They can know Jake Davis is going to ghost every screen, but when it's the 3rd or 4th screen of the possession, then it's just tough to communicate it. So creating clarity within like your decision-making tree or the responsibilities of each player on the court, I think it allows you to play really fast and with a lot of confidence, because every player on the court knows what to expect from the other 4 guys.
So, Coach, we've covered 6 elements of what we're defining as Illinois' system that we would credit as being modern components of it, and the 7th of that is a system for tagging up. So, I don't want it to be lost on our audience. We have audience members of all different levels, but can you give us a kind of a rundown on what tagging up is first and foremost?
Yeah, I think some people brand tagging up as an offensive rebounding system. I would agree with you in that. But it's also a system for defensive transition. So like when I think about it, I attempted to install tagging up at the high school level, and you'll see it in the clips where it's essentially tagging up is crashing all 5 guys. There's a little more nuance to it than that, which I'll explain, but you'll see like each clip, it's going to look like a lot of Illinois jerseys crashing the paint, hitting bodies on each shot. And sometimes it's off of the drives, sometimes it's off of shots, but you'll see a lot of orange or a lot of white, whatever color they're wearing. That's they're crashing the glass. And there are a few different reasons why they do that. Again, like I wouldn't say they're the most athletic team in the world or they're the quickest team in the world, but they are extremely. They got a ton of size and they got a ton of physicality, and so they're figuring out ways to create their advantage for forcing more possessions. And again, it's kind of an analytics driven decision. Is if we can't create or if we can't win the possession battle by forcing a bunch of turnovers, then we're going to figure out another way to win the possession battle. And you'll see a few clips that I have in here of turnovers off the tag ups or tag ups that don't result in an offensive rebound. And I'll explain why that's in there as well. Because again, technically it's an offensive rebounding system. But I see it again as a continuation of what you were talking about in that last segment, which is eliminating pauses in the game. It's a way to immediately get into your defensive system. And so what it is you crash the high side. You find a body, you crash the high side. So you're seeking bodies. You're not necessarily pursuing the ball. You're going right for a body, trying to hit the high side, jam people up in transition, and look for opportunities to offensive rebound.
Yeah, I think a lot of coaches, they treat offensive rebounding and they treat transition defense as two separate entities. And this tagging up system, provides connective tissue between both of those elements. So a team like Valencia from the Euro League, they're using this tag up system, to match up in transition. And since they're matched up through the tag up system, they can just start kind of pressing you from there because they've already got their matchups. So it's to me, it's a hybrid system of we're able to crash the glass. And really what you're doing is you're matching to the high side of the player that you're matched with. So you're able to compete for 50-50 balls with them, but you already have your matchups. So, old school basketball is, we go for the offensive rebound, everybody sprints back to the paint, and then we start pointing and talking from there to start matching up to our players. We're starting the matchup process on the flight of the shot, which allows us to compete for offensive rebounds. It allows us to send more players to the glass, and it allows us to be already matched up before we sprint back to the paint and start pointing and talking like we would back in the day. Am I explaining that correctly, Coach?
Yeah, and the other thing I would say is like as I take a look back at some of the other clips is again, there's a big emphasis on getting to the high side. They're not always consistent about it, but again, I think I would imagine they have a one singular coach that's assigned to grading their high side crashes. And the reason they get to the high side is so that they don't end up behind in defensive transition. And so you'll see them all get on the high side, but it also positions them to be in the middle of the floor in transition and be able to push the ball to one side, flatten the ball out, and slow down offensive transition. And so the idea is, yes, we want to earn more offensive possessions, but we're also just trying to, can we stall out the offensive break? And if we can stall out the offensive break, then we give ourselves a chance with the length and physicality that we have to get stops in the half court, to contest shots at the rim in drop coverage, all that stuff.
Yeah, Coach, can you go through a couple possessions and just kind of stop it at the key moment where you've kind of got maybe 4 or 5 players on the back of another of their matchup? And also, you'd mentioned you tried to install this at the high school level. So, what kind of demands does this have from an awareness standpoint with your players? And what kind of vulnerabilities do you think that we have in trying to implement a system like this? I would consider this to be more of an advanced concept. I know that there are a lot of coaches that are implementing it very successfully at the high school level. I can't say that this has been an approach that I've implemented with my teams, so I don't have that experience, game court experience of teaching something like this. But I know that it's becoming very popular, and that teams are having a tremendous amount of success with it for the reasons that you mentioned, for connecting your offensive rebounding with your defensive transition, as well as being able to slow down teams in transition.
Yeah, and you see like the crash doesn't create an offensive rebound in this example, but you can see every player in defensive transition is able to load the middle of the floor, and then obviously they're able to get a body between the ball and the basket. We call our transition defense, and I got this from my coach when I was at Davidson. We call it secret service, and the basket is the VIP and the ball is the bullet, and we have to stop the bullet. And what does the Secret Service do to stop the bullet? They put their body between the VIP and the bullet. So we focus on, like, we're in Secret Service mode when we're getting back in transition. Put your body on the line, get between the basket and the ball, and so that's kind of what this is allowing them to do. Just not quite as conservatively. They're able to earn some more possessions out of it as well. So a couple of things that, like, I think you need a singular coach that tracks it. I think it's really hard to hold players accountable to crashing every single time unless you have one coach that's assigned to it. One of the other advantages of it is, like, this one doesn't end up creating an offensive rebound for them, creates a foul situation. One, you could put teams in foul trouble by attacking offensive rebounds. But then also, if you're getting called for fouls, what have you stopped? You've stopped the offensive transition. You've made it a dead ball situation, or you'll see guys bobbling the ball out of bounds. You've stopped the offensive transition, which offensive transition is probably the most efficient form of offense in the game. So being able to crash, stop offensive transition, potentially earn some more opportunities, but it's not necessarily about that. It's about controlling the pace of the game and saying, we're going to be in charge, and you're going to have to adjust to what we want to do. So even though they're not the fastest team, they are one of the bigger and stronger teams in the country. And that allows them to dictate pace by saying, like, we're going to pin you on the high side on every shot, so that we have time to get back in transition, but then also so that we can give ourselves some extra opportunities. When I tried to implement it, some of the issues that I ran into is, if you crash everybody, you have to demand extreme effort in getting back in transition. You can't have people crashing and going from high side to sliding to the low side and then not getting back in transition, or getting behind in transition. Which is really hard to do. Again, I think you have to have a coach that's dedicated to tracking it. The other thing is that I think you either need a group of players that has unbelievable conditioning, or you need to be able to rotate a lot of players. So, like, a team like Nova Southeastern, like a dominant Division II team, they rotate 15 guys. They'll do hockey subs, but they're saying, like, you guys are going in for 4 minutes and you're never stopping. Like, you're pressing the entire game. You're tagging up on every possession. Like, we are going to earn possessions. We are never going to give the other team a break on either end of the floor. We're going to, again, eliminate the pauses in the game. This is the perfect example with, you watch number 2, Stojakovic in the corner, of saying, you're not pursuing the ball. You're pursuing a body. Hit the body first and then pursue the ball. And so you'll see it out of him on this shot. Like, he could watch the ball and get to the high side and never make contact, but he's going straight for the body before he's ever pursuing the ball. Yeah. Can I push that guy underneath? He kind of went a little low side, but he pushes him underneath, gets him out of position, and then he pursues the ball. Like, they put a big emphasis on saying, we're not pursuing the ball. We're putting body to body across the board and then pursuing the ball.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I'd never heard that Secret Service term before. I thought I'd heard all the basketball stuff that there could possibly be. The Secret Service thing I'd never heard before.
Yeah,
Last thing,
that was a Coach McKillop special.
yeah, last thing here on the tagging up. What are your thoughts on shot location for responsibilities? Does it depend where the shot's coming from to how they would execute? Obviously there's a fine line here because if you have inside rebounding position, you've got to make that up in your transition sprint with your matchup, and all it takes is kind of one guy. If they lose that, then it can compromise your whole transition defense. So talk about the shot location, how that might change the responsibilities, Coach.
Yeah, I mean, I think no matter what, layups are tough to offensive rebound. Although because of the way that they play the dunker spot, you'll see that they end up in opposite other side of the basket situations to rebound their own misses on layups. So that puts them in pretty good position. And then like wing shots like this, you'll see they especially crash the backside. And then you'll see the ball side corner where Jake Davis is. Like, he's not really as aggressively going in towards the ball. He's kind of getting more towards the elbow to start the defensive transition, because the likelihood of the ball coming that direction on a miss is pretty low. Usually misses from that wing are gonna bounce high and opposite, and so they'll really aggressively attack the opposite side. But then you'll see, like, a lot of times ball side, and like this is a good example where weak side is crashing, but then the ball side, you see number 3 and Keaton Wagler, they already start getting back. There's just a kind of a low likelihood that the ball is going to come back that direction. And so again, I think they're probably talking about like where misses go based on where they're shot on the court, and how to get back based on where the shot is and where you are in relation to the shot.
All right, Coach. With that, we're going to put a wrap to our 7 segments. I thought we would do about 90 minutes. We always tend to run long, me and you, so we're closing in on 2 hours. We've covered these 7 different topics. If you had just quickly, what feels the most modern element of this Illinois system here?
That's a good question. I think specifically the ways that they attack switches, I think, are really cool. I had a lot of fun looking into that and seeing some of the ways off ball they mess with the backside. I think Matt Painter's another one that like does a really good job of messing with who's in help position. But I think the most modern thing is probably the advantage creation. Is the ideas around you don't necessarily have to set the screen to create an advantage. There are lots of different ways to create an advantage. And then we just need to make sure we maintain our shape. Like, I think that's a very soccer thing, is maintaining shape on the backside, so that you have space and you have passing angles off of drives or off of screens. So I think the advantage creation, probably to me, that feels the most modern, because even the positionless stuff, like when we looked at the legacy of coaches that we've built upon to get to this point, several of them were going kind of positionless way earlier on than it was popular to do that. So I think the advantage creation is probably the thing that feels the most modern to me.
Yeah, I would agree with you on the advantage creation. And I think that's coming in a big way all throughout basketball, which is, the idea of a coach, I have this offensive system. I've got the circle motion. I've got, a 5-out ball screen motion. I've got Brad Underwood. I've got the spread offense. And no longer is it, not necessarily about the system, but it's about, the advantages that whatever system creates. And you can run the circle motion offense or whatever offense with this kind of advantage creation in mind. But this system is like, we're going to get to the advantage creation first, and that's going to be the driving force of the things that we do. Last question before we get out of here, Coach. What's one of these concepts that you think is going to continue to really make progress in the near future? Where do you kind of expect to see major growth of these kind of 7 things that we've pinpointed as elements of modern basketball? And again, we're not saying, these are the only elements that make up modern basketball. These are 7 elements of Illinois system that we identified as modern. And I guess I'll let you finish, and I'll take, my thoughts here are, where do I see things continue to grow in the near future? I think it would be with this number 7 on the screen, the tag up, and not necessarily the tag up specifically, but the idea of this connectedness of, a lot of coaches, we do this. This is our half court offense. This is our half court defense. We've got this transition system, but having these elements that connect all the different phases of the game all together. Any thoughts where you're seeing what might be, major growth in the near future for some of these concepts?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. I think one, when you have the tag up discussion, like, again, it's one of the reasons I put Rick Carlisle on that graphic, is because, like, you saw it out of the Pacers when they made the NBA Finals, is that they were just absolutely relentless for 48 minutes of the game, putting pressure with their spacing offensively, but then it was like their offense. There wasn't transition. It was offense and defense at the same time. It was like everything was kind of, all the lines were blurred, and they're putting pressure on you constantly. And it's scramble, scramble, scramble all the time. How can we create confusion on the defensive side of the ball and also create confusion on the offensive side of the ball? So yeah, eliminating those pauses in the game, I think, is a big one. But then also, I think you see coaches come up with some really creative ways to defend things like this. This is I think, like, kind of the bigger new movement that I feel like has a lot of solutions to a lot of problems. I think you'll probably see some coaches start to figure out how to mess with coverages defensively on the 2 side of, like, a ball screen motion like this. And you're going to start to see coaches get way more creative on the 2 side. And, like, I've already seen it out of some teams in Europe do, like, that rifle action on the 2 side instead of things like a hammer or an exchange or 45 cuts, all that stuff. So it's interesting to see, like, how defenses adapt and try to figure out ways to dictate what the offense is going to do. And then, I mean, coaches always say it, like, the offense should always have the answer, and you see these pretty brilliant basketball minds start to come up with some fun answers.
Coach Casey, thanks so much. This has been fun. Anybody watching this live or watching the replay, make sure you're following Coach Casey. That is X, Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube. Coach, I've enjoyed this. We've done 3 of these, I believe, in the last 5 days between me and you. I'm not quite sick of you yet, but I don't know. Maybe if we did one more, I would start to be feeling that way. But I've really
blame you.
I've really enjoyed our basketball discussion. I think we've had some really interesting discussion, and as always, I learn from here. I learn from you. I listen to you talk, and I think about the game a little bit differently every time that we connect. So, thanks so much for doing that. And coaches out there, make sure you're following Coach Casey across all these platforms to get his content as it comes out. Coach, that's going to do it. Hey, we'll connect up for another one soon if you're up for it. We've done 2 of these on Illinois. Those have been interesting, and I can't wait to see what the future holds for us here.
Absolutely. This has been fun. Again, I think I could talk basketball all day. I love this stuff. So appreciate you, Coach.
All right, Coach, we'll talk soon. See you, everybody.
All right, have a good one.